you want something from that person, there are two handful of other people that want the same thing.
Yeah.
If there's no competition, there's no market. It's just as simple as it gets, I mean, if you want something from a person because he's very skilled and good at what he's doing, there are other people that, for example, in our case, patients. You compete with other companies that are in development cycles that want the same patients, essentially.
Have you ever noticed that LinkedIn is not an accurate representation of who people really are? Welcome to Season 2 of Leadership Lab, the show where I take you with me as we do a deep dive on some of the most interesting personalities in the life sciences industry today. In order for us to do so, I need you to unlock your phone and just tap the bell. The goal of this is to inspire the next generation of leaders, to create value for them and really tell the stories that will allow you to get where you're trying to get to in your career. You ready? Let's go. All right. Welcome to the Leadership Lab. My name's Maurice. Today I'm joined by Christopher Hertz. He is the CEO of Piomic. Chris, welcome.
Nice to meet you. Nice. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share some things.
My pleasure. Before we jump into everything, could you just give us kind of a little bit of like who you are and what you do? What's the company all about?
So I'm Christopher. I'm a molecular biologist by training. Now I do mostly sheep herding. So I raise investor funds. I take physicians out for dinners. But originally I'm trained scientist. I'm one of the founders, Managing Director at Piomic. We are a mid to late stage Medtech startup. We were founded back in 2016. So we're approaching 10 years, getting older day by day. We're in the advanced wound care space. We're actually in the indication. Lead indication is the second highest mortality in all of healthcare after lung cancer. So it's pre-post-amputational diabetics we're treating. Mm-hmm. We got recently granted FDA breakthrough device designation, and we're actually getting very close to launching the product globally with core focus in the US.
I'm really excited to kind of talk about how you got to this.
Sure.
But let's start back at the beginning. I mean, you were, as I discovered, you're from Hamburg originally.
Yes.
So, what were you like as a kid? Like, what did you like to do?
I think it depends on who you ask. If you ask my teachers, I was probably more rowdy. But I would still hope to consider myself, let's say, a little bit adventurous, trying to, but also step over boundaries. I came to Switzerland to study. I mean, the ETH is one of the best pan-European universities globally, or pan-Europe in Europe. So I was always fascinated by life science, by biology, essentially. Mm-hmm. So I did molecular biology back in the day. But in the end, I think, I'm extrovert. I'm talkative. I can persuade people if I want to, or tell stories. Yeah. Exactly. That's how I ended in my role.
And did you like science in school? Did you?
Yeah, I liked science.
That was like from a younger age.
Yes. I liked science in school, but I wasn't nerdy about it. But I appreciated it. Let's put it in these terms.
Okay.
But I also thought about, I mean, when you come out of school, it's very hard to. Everybody thinks there's like a call for something. Essentially, I will study this and this. I didn't have that call. I mean, I had multiple different, let's say, areas I wanted to pursue, or that was, and like I had an idea about. For example, also psychology was on.
Oh, okay, me too.
Yeah,
I have a degree in psychology as well.
Exactly. So there was a little bit of a match there as well. And then in the end, just with open discussions with, for example, my brother, I started with biology.
Did you have any kind of entrepreneurial influence when you were young? Was there anybody around you in your family or?
I mean, my family has a little bit of an entrepreneurial background just from, parts of the family. My uncle had a business in software. My brother started a business when he came out of university. So there is a little bit of a, let's say, maybe educational match here, just to try something out new and not to be too scared initially when there's maybe a little bit of risk involved there.
Any extracurriculars? Like, did you like sports or music?
I did mostly sports, some sports. I did
what?
American football, I did some tennis,
American football in Hamburg?
No, back here in Switzerland, actually.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Are you part of this league? I think there's only one.
There was one league. There was one league, a major league here in Switzerland. I played for a year in St. Gallen, American football.
Okay. A good friend of mine is involved with it, actually. Yeah. We can talk about that after. But okay. So what I'd be interested in, we talk a lot about like decision points that we make along the way. It's like, why did I choose to do this? And the idea of this podcast is sort of to give people a view to how you ended. They might want to be you, right? There's a lot of people out there that would love to be in your job, but they don't know how to get there, right? And so when you said you could have gone a lot of different directions. Could have studied in Germany, could have studied elsewhere, could have studied psychology, chose to study molecular biology. But how did you make that decision? How did that come about?
The decision of my studies?
Yeah, like come to ETH, choose this subject. What were the drivers?
I could pretend like there's a magic formula, but I wouldn't know how to recreate it, to be very honest. My brother came to study here prior to me. So there was for sure a little bit of a path already laid out for me back in that day. I really adored David Attenborough back when I was a kid, so I loved documentary films. I thought in the beginning maybe I'd do something in documentary filming. That's why biology, but then I realized I'm way too impatient to actually do filming. And then I just went down the path of most complexity, which is in biology, then in the end molecular health science, cell biology, which is just very complex and very fascinating. So I just went down that path. I also enjoyed my studies, to be honest. So I had a good time during my study years. And then when I went into the master's degree, I realized, okay, there's a very clear path for many people at ETH or the, let's say, more competitive university to go either in a PhD, which can, the majority of masters in life science go into a PhD, which locks you in for quite a while into a very specialized work environment. Or you go straight into, let's say, more corporate world. You go straight into a job with a master's degree, you get general training in a specific field, and you might not be overqualified like you could be 4 years after your PhD.
Yeah.
So I decided back when I finished off my master's, I would not pursue PhD and started to look elsewhere to find another opportunity, which in the end then came to form Piomic.
So I'm keen to get into that because you probably had no idea what you're doing.
Essentially, I was young.
Well, no, you get a master's in a scientific discipline.
Mm-hmm.
There's no business training. And I mean, I founded a business after, had scientific training, but nothing in business. And then I kind of worked hands-on in corporate functions before founding a business.
Yeah.
I would have had no clue when I just graduated. So you graduated and you started right away. There was nothing in between.
Nothing in between. There was a half year of, let's say, voluntary work in Africa with a friend of mine.
Okay.
With which I founded the company eventually. He went on a trip with a physician team, the Ärzte ohne Grenzen.
Yep.
So let's say no
Doctors
frontier.
Without Borders.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So he got in contact with patients with a lot of non-healing wounds. We both came back. We actually both were separating from our long-term girlfriends at that stage. So we both came back very invigorated and eager to start something new. And this is how it all happened.
Okay. Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit. So where did you go?
So we went to Tanzania.
Okay. So you're in Tanzania and this is mostly in the elderly there, or is this?
So he went to a project in the south where it was general care for people without access to healthcare.
Yep.
We actually founded an NGO afterwards together that also supports. We built a hospital actually in that area in Tanzania. So he came back. I met him in Africa. We actually went on a safari trip afterwards.
But you knew each other before?
Yeah, I knew him since study back in the days.
And was there an aha moment for you? Because what you said at the outset of this podcast is but this is a massive issue in healthcare. Mm-hmm. But it's something you never hear about. People say, you got diabetes, you need to take insulin. Oh, that's too bad. Or now we have other treatments which might help it. But nobody realized what's happened at the end stage. You hear about amputations maybe, but did you know about this before you went there?
No, I wasn't fully aware about how big the problem is. And especially because the problem is a little bit masked, because it affects your grandma, or your granddad.
Yeah.
Now we're 10 years in, even our employees come with family members that suddenly have non-healing wounds or they're close to amputation. Just a friend of mine, she works 1 block away from here at a clinic. Her father just died from an amputation, limb amputation, due to a non-healing wound, just last week actually. So it happens all the time. It's actually quite prevalent, but due to the fact that it affects your grandma, nobody talks about it because patients feel shameful about it. They don't like to share it. They don't communicate it much because it's also long-term care. It's a chronic disease, So it's a little bit in the shadow.
So explain that to me a little bit. So I get a wound on my foot, let's say, because it doesn't have good blood flow.
It can be multiple points. So it can be blood flow, so either bad flow to the wound or bad flow back to the heart. So it can be either arterial or venous ulcer. That often comes with bad blood circulation. You get, for example, an acute wound, and the wound it gets inflamed or it gets infected and gets larger and larger. For diabetics, it's actually affecting up to 1 in 4 diabetics during their lifetime. So it's a major driver because there were not that many diabetics at an advanced age in, for example, the 70s, 80s, or type 2 diabetes came to be through lifestyle and food and, let's say, processed foods or high-calorie sodas in the US, for example. So these patients now tend to get into an age range around 50, 60, 70, 80, where they develop these non-healing wounds. And for them, they're mostly neuropathic, so they don't feel their feet. So, for example, they walk around in shoes. The shoes are too small. They have a stone in their shoe, and then they don't feel it. And suddenly they look into the mirror and they realize, oh, I have a actually deep wound right down at my toe or at my heel. And then these wounds don't heal. They get amputated, and then they actually do slice by slice, and the patients die eventually.
So they die from the amputation?
Either from, for example, systemic infection or sepsis. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So you were in Africa. You were like, oh my God, this is a thing.
Yeah.
And that was the inspiration.
Yeah. So we were, this friend was exposed to physical therapies back in the day during his studies. And we then sat together. We both said, we see there's a huge problem. We think this could be an interesting space to work in. And then actually we both said, okay, we give us a certain amount of time where we try to build something and see if it resonates. If it doesn't resonate, we stop. So
how much time?
I think we said around 9 months, and then we see if something comes about it. We continue. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So I actually got another friend of mine engaged. I know him since kindergarten.
Okay.
He is an engineer. So we were both biologists. He was an engineer. So you want to build something, you need an engineer. That's what you think with 27. Even though he's a mechanical engineer, not an electrical engineer, but that's another story for another day. So then we sat together, we started discussing it, and then we got our fourth founder in, which was the previous research group leader at ETH for applied electromagnetics in biology and medicine. And he was actually at the same time looking for spinning out or getting a new company out of the technology they were researching at ETH. And he was looking for a team. And essentially it was kind of a match made in heaven. So we sat together. He was very friendly, supporting us with prototypes and essentially doing core development for the initial study we performed. So this is how the team got assembled eventually.
What help did you have at that stage, right? I mean, you have 3 guys, 2 biologists, 1 engineer who probably don't know much. And then obviously a group leader is going to be maybe a little bit more advanced. But with respect to actually setting up a company, was there any advice or, I mean, did anybody help you with that in the beginning? Like for all those people that are thinking about doing this, like how did you go about it?
I think the ecosystem has developed quite a bit. Or I mentioned earlier maybe that I'm not that close to the early stage ecosystem anymore, just because we are now 10 years in and we don't go to that many events anymore. But there is support in Switzerland if you want to create a new startup or a new company in the field. Or there are a lot of different, let's say, societies that can support you. There are innovation grants that you can get to do little proof of concept studies and so on. I mean, there are...
Like what? What would you say?
I mean, for example, if you look at startups that are more in the scientific engineering ETH space, VentureKick, for example.
Right.
You can go, you can pitch, you can get through multiple stages to get money from VentureKick. Then there's, for example, also starting agencies that support you actually founding the company, and then you can do an additional grant, for example, to do small proof of concept studies. There's InnoSwiss. InnoSwiss is huge. You can get either coaching through InnoSwiss. We had 5 years of coaching, I think.
Okay,
InnoSwiss.
That's what I'm more after. Yeah. It's like, okay, so that was the vehicle you used, and they were able to kind of help you with setting up, let's say, tax issues, or how are we how are we dividing the shares of this company? How do we actually structure operations, planning?
Exactly.
Okay.
So for example, when we started at Impact Hub Zurich, back in the day when they started.
Yeah.
We were also part of one of the first accelerators that they kicked off here at Kraftwerk, right next to the space here. And there you get exposed to a lot of subject matter experts. So you need to choose different topics where you think you need to develop your knowledge on. And these are experts, they come from the field. They might not be directly exposed to the exact thing you do, but they come, for example, in our case, from Medtech, 30 years of Medtech experience.
Right.
And I think in the end, you just need to find the right group of advisors that advises you in a little bit differentiated way, because one person is not going to give you the best advice. A group of people is going to give you very good advice, because you can then nuance their feedback based on what you actually need to do.
What happened when you hit 9 months?
When we hit 9 months, we actually had the prototypes developed. We had the granting of our first in human study from Swissmedic. So we could do proof of concept study, and we had our first investors, which were private angels that invested the first money into the company.
So we got easy.
It sounds very easy. I have to be frank. We also got, I think, on one hand, for sure, it is about the most important thing is the team. In the beginning, when you start this, every advisor always tells you the team. And you think, sure, I know that's why I'm here. It is the team. But then the older you get, you realize it's really about the team, you know? And I have very, very big respect for everybody that does this alone. I think this is a very, very hard endeavor. And with the more people you can share that burden, the better you get and the more you can endure. And I could have not done it without the core team that is still with the company and still in the same roles now after 10 years. So I think assembling the team and then being able to get initial money on very easy deliverables, which for us was we prove it with a prototype in human. If that works, we continue. And we pitched it like that to those investors back in the day. So we told them, this is a defined amount of money. We do the prototype, we do the first in human. If that works, we raise a proper big round and we continue. If not, then that was an adventure on its own.
I mean, it's ambitious. Like 9 months to build a prototype that shows that it's actually effective. I mean, that seems to me to be like a really big task.
I mean, the thing is, the technology is based on previous research. So in the end, it was more of getting it into a deliverable format that you could use safely in a first-in-human study.
Okay.
And for that, you can, essentially create parameters that make it as a prototype. In the end, it was a stationary man-sized device. It was like this tall, and in the end, we created this small piece here, which is based on the same device, same technology, which we co-developed in the same time while we did the clinical study. So we expedited the whole pathway by just, on one hand, being creative, but also just saying, okay, if I have a physical output, I can mimic that output in a new device I develop while I do the clinical study. So if I would have listened to some, that's what I mean, it's good to have multiple advisors. If I would have listened to some of the advisors we got very early on, I would still be doing test in sheep.
Okay.
And we said no. We said, we don't think that's necessary. We think that this is a safe therapy. We will talk directly to Swissmedic and see, can we do that study as a safety study? And on secondary endpoints, also look at efficacy. And they agreed on it. And we essentially cut 3 years of pre-testing and then doing the R&D and then doing the study right on the finished product.
So there it is, everybody. Tell us how it works. I mean, it's light and magnets.
Yes, so it's a super additive synergistic effect. That sounds like a complicated word because it is complicated. But essentially what we do is we activate a mechanosensitive ion channel in the cell membrane called TRPC1 to introduce calcium or let calcium influx into the cell. This leads then to a production, for example, of nitric oxide, which then leads to more oxygen in the tissue. which in lay term we always say it's like in a plant. You water the plant.
Could be a whole different application for that nitrous oxide.
Exactly.
Anyway,
We come to this probably in a second. And then in the same time, you activate an enzyme called cytochrome C, which is in the respiratory chain, to take that oxygen with sugar to produce ATP.
Yep.
And ATP is the intracellular molecule of energy, and you need energy for healing. So it's really a tissue regenerative platform where lead indication is in delayed healing, but it has platform applications in acute healing, in, for example, sports medicine, in infection prevention. So quite large verticals, which are based on the same core platform, which is really essentially you bring oxygen into the tissue and you activate the enzyme to produce energy.
So when I tore my ACL, they told me, yeah, it'll take a long time because the knee actually does not
very well pure perfusion.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no perfusion. It will heal slowly. Same with the toe injury I had. They told me the same thing. In theory, I could strap that on. I mean, in theory, and this could aid with the healing of like an internal injury.
The wave propagates through your tissue at quite a distance. The light penetrates up to 1 to 2 centimeters into the tissue itself, depending on what wavelengths you look at. In preclinical testing, we would heavily assume there should be a beneficial effect. For that, we need to do the proper clinical studies to get it certified.
Right.
But in preclinical testing, there should be a strong effect.
It's good to know how it works. Let's go back to, you've launched the company, you've hit the 9-month mark, got some effects, got some money, and then you're like, well, great.
Exactly.
So 9 months, I mean, we're 10 years down the road, still haven't sold the product yet.
Yes.
So that's, I think, the thing that people often don't see. I mean, it's a very hidden, it's great when there's success and you're like, oh, yay, wow, but people don't see the 10 years that happened before that. Like if I'm listening to this and I'm just graduating, I'm thinking, oh, wow, you get investors, you get a proof of concept in 9 months, you got Swissmedic approval. Why does it take so long? What's the next 10 years? I mean, what were the ups, downs along the way from there on?
That's a good question. No, I mean, you always start in validating the technology if you can in human, in a study.
Yeah.
You always need a large-scale phase 3 in pharma or a large-scale reimbursement study when it comes to Medtech. We are not in the inpatient space, so not under the DRG. We are more in the outpatient home care space, which is separate reimbursement.
Spitex.
Yeah, for example, Spitex. Yeah.
Okay.
Which means you need to have a proper study, preferably gold standard, that shows the health economic value you want to perceive to insurers, for example. So for us, we did the first proof of concept study to power a larger RCT later on. Which is a randomized controlled trial, exactly. So currently we run the Maverick study. It's an IDE, so it's got an investigational device exempt study. So it's our study to get FDA approval. And at the same time, it's also our reimbursement study. So it has Medicare approval. It's the largest IDE in med devices in wound care ever performed. It's 30 sites, whole US, 224 patients. It's a behemoth of a study with sham control. So long project, took us many years to prepare. We just had the first initial analysis. We get the first statistical analysis actually by end of this year. So it's an exciting time for us.
While we have it here, how does it actually work? Like, what do I do?
So you use single session disposables. You strap it in a sterile adapter, which needs to be exchanged at every treatment session. So because you work with breached skin, so it's open wounds, it needs to be sterile because infection is one of the main...
So you strap this thing on.
So you put it in, normally this is in a sterile case. You take it, you put this in this, you knock it, you click it in, and then, for example, this is a single patient strap. You take the logo by logo, you take it in your hand, and you, for example, you fix it at the location where you want to treat, for example, here. And then you start the therapy. It has a sensor. The therapy is roughly 15 minutes. It's fully automated. It treats the tissue, and the bar goes through, and that's it. So it's qualified for home use. It's even lay user validated.
So 15 minutes it's on, and then...
That's it. You do it 1 to 2 a week on the open wound size. So wounds normally... You clean them. So patients come in weekly, sometimes even multiple times a week, to get the wound cleaned and treated. So you do this therapy as a tissue booster on the open wound size. So what you really do is it's an energy drink for your wound.
Right.
So you bring the energy into the tissue so that the wound can heal. Essentially, what we do.
I notice it turns red.
Yes.
Right. And right now there's like red light, mask, all this kind of stuff.
It's a good question,
Could I put this on my face to make me look great? I mean,
we would. So aesthetics is one of the platform applications. We are not cleared as a therapy in aesthetics, but we did a so-called soft launch in Switzerland, Central Europe, which is a key opinion leader launch.
Right.
And for example, in that case, this soft launch led to another RCT, so another randomized controlled study that is sponsored actually by a group of key opinion leaders themselves. So we are not even the sponsors. We are just providing materials and supporting and conducting the study or designing the study. We're not conducting the study, which is in a different indication, but it's also a 120 patient gold standard study.
Okay.
So, So to your question, when it comes to aesthetics, yes, red light therapies, the mask coming from China.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these products are not
or a bed. I heard
validated.
About a bed. You can sleep on a red light bed.
I'm telling you, I mean, red light is very, very hype right now. So it's a wave. Light therapy has been there for multiple decades, being investigated more and more and more, and it has an effect. It's broadly proven. But if you buy a mask from China, most of the time they have no clinical validation. They have never really validated the output. You don't know what wavelengths, the specificity of it. So when you look at this and you see it and you say, it looks red to me. It looks red to me, That's only one part of the story, because, for example, you also have some LEDs that you think are off. They're not off. You just can't see them. And it's not a broad spectrum light, It's not 50, 60 nanometers. It's a very narrow bandwidth, which is exactly an excitation window of that enzyme.
Channel. Oh, okay.
So you transfer, essentially you help this enzyme at that window to be more active. And these two wavelengths are really designed to activate this specific enzyme. From the outside, it might look red, but it's much more complex than it actually looks like.
Did you ever come close to giving up?
Yes, sure. Multiple times, yeah.
Okay. Why?
I mean, we want to be frank. I mean, you get a much thicker skin over the years. But for example, we had a year prior to Christmas where we essentially had to lay everybody off and tell them, guys, if we don't get the financing, we have to lay you off. There is financing coming in, but it's not on the bank yet. And due to obligational rights, we have to do measures and we have to officially lay you off. Please bear with us. The risk we think is low. We hope we get that financing, but we can't promise. And we got the go from the investor on the 25th of December, on Christmas Eve in the afternoon. So if you do that, you get thick skin eventually. And that's what I meant with the team. If you can share these moments with other people, it's a much easier burden to bear than if you have to do it alone. So kudos, for example, to you. And I mean, it's hard to do business, and it's hard to do business alone. Yeah.
I believe that I've got great people around me as well, right? It's a different setup, of course, but it's huge benefit to be able to just bounce stuff off people, or you vent together, or you try to solve problems together. But I've often thought of, I should have had a partner when I started this. I mean, I'm good at some things. I'm definitely not good at some other things. I mean, we have people in the next room who would vouch for that. Yeah. There are some things that I do well, some things I definitely don't. And over the years, you managed to sort of fill in those gaps with people around you. But at the start, like you said, you had biologists, but you also had an engineer, and then you had somebody who's got the expertise in the light and magnetism and whatnot. So what do you do? Like when you have these moments where it's like, okay, it's very difficult. Is there something that you tap into that allows you to overcome or move forward, or what allows you to continue? What drives you?
I'm not saying I'm going meditating home and suddenly my problems have disappeared. That's sadly not the truth. I think in the end, the longer you do it, the more you develop mechanisms to deal with it. Things are most of the time solvable. It might be a big hurdle to jump in that moment. Often there's also disappointment, I mean, you work on things and you work on projects, you work on financing, you invest time into people or into ideas, and they just don't transpire to be. So there's also a lot of just disappointment, which doesn't kill the company, but it's just disappointing, right? So how do you motivate yourself to continue, stand up again? And I mean, for me, in my role, motivate my staff to be 110% and always be there, even if there's like a down cycle.
Right.
Then on the other hand, what we do is for example, we do walks with the team where we just go, we're right next at main station. We just always walk down at the small river next to main station and then just breathe it out, be pissed. Sorry for that language. Go home, come back the next day, and things might look different, or you might have a different other solution.
Walking. Okay.
I have to be frank, I never had a mentor in that way that I had a stable person following me for a long period of time. Now I have certain, let's say, more experienced folks around me that I can call up to. We have a very experienced board now. This was, for example, a big change in the company. Previously, we were the founders, we were in the board, we were essentially running the business. We were like the cooks, making the soup and also saying, oh, it's delicious, So
right, okay.
That's not good governance, but that's what happens in the beginning, right? Because you need to get proper people with industry experience excited to join your company, to sit on your board, because also a risk and it's work, In the beginning, it's not paid, it's extracurriculum. So now we have a very experienced board and we can bounce off a lot with the board and we get feedback from the board and we get challenged by the board. Because now as a founder, I'm one of the founders of the company, but I'm an employee.
Yep.
I can get laid off any day if I don't perform or if I do something harmful to the company.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit for people that maybe are at that stage where they've got a company that's starting to run, but they're maybe seeing that, you've got partners. I've, again, a lot of friends who've started companies maybe with 3 founders, but then you've got one who's kind of going off the rails.
It is the same happened with us.
So what did you when did you say, okay, it's time to get a board? How did you know what a board is supposed to do? How do you know how to incentivize your board members? What rhythm should they be intervening? How often do you have board meetings? Like, walk me through that decision process.
So I start with how to get people incentivized. So same with our employees. We always urged our employees to take a certain haircut on salary and get this compensated with shares. So that they are also incentivized in the success of the company and that they feel part of it because it's a shared goal you work towards. I don't like to use the word family because we are not in a family. A family, you would jump off the bridge for your family, but in a work environment, it's you respect each other and you work together towards it, but it's not a unconditional love, I mean, you are in this vehicle to get to a goal, for instance, in our case, to bring this product to as many patients as possible, but also to return a good return to our investors because this is financed through investors. So same with board members. We heavily incentivize our board members only through shares initially. We built the board. It took us 2-3 years to get people from, in the beginning, some of them were early stage investors, another person, our chairman. Shout out to Bertrand. He's a very knowledgeable wound care expert, senior executive. We saw that he had previous experience in acquiring wound care assets. So we essentially cold wrote him on LinkedIn back in 2016 when it all started, 17. And we met him in a mall. And we invited him to coffee.
In a mall?
Yeah, and in somewhere down in, I think in Frauenfeld or... Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we met him and the thing is, back when you are 27 and you are on fire for something, I think it's hard to say no to you. So that was the lucky part of us. We were young, we were 27 and we wanted to do something and we were on fire.
So what stage did you build the board?
We started building the board from, I think 1 year after inception. We started getting these relationships established. And then when we did the first proper larger round, so our Series A, a year, 1.5 years or 2 years prior, we switched the board to be ready for that financing round,
right? To
show guys, we are not just us
playing around.
This is like a board. To come to your question. So for example, we have a fixed board schedule every year. We have cycles. We have review cycles, financial review cycles, governance review cycles. We have committees. We have a finance and audit committee. We have a compensation committee. So it's a very fairly structured process that helps a lot, because otherwise you get lost.
You mentioned that you provide shares to all the employees.
Yes.
Is there a certain tenure that they have to have, or is it like you join, you get a restricted stock package, and then that? How do you?
So there are many different ways how to give stock. We incentivize our employees through phantom shares, because that means they don't have to pay taxes upfront on salary, just to also reduce the risk for them. Then there's always a vesting period, so you need to stay for a certain amount of years to vest your shares, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, I experience stories of people leaving and then they taking home packages of shares that you think might not be the most. In hindsight, you think maybe there would have been a better vehicle to compensate them than giving them shares. So I think once people stick to it and they do what you hired them for a certain period of time, they earn their shares, and then they're part of that story.
At what point was the decision made that you would be CEO or managing director? I don't know what you guys call it.
I think it was never a discussion. It came to be very, very early on, in the first weeks. I think in the end, it's in these things, it's a character trait. How you are, how you present, is a soft skill trait. How do you present? How are you exposed to business prior? And one of my other founders was scientific technical founder. The other founder was an engineering technical founder. The third one was the scientist, and I was.
You were also the scientist, but you were.
I understand, and I have a very good basic understanding of science, but I have more practical other skills in some other fields.
So at that stage, how did you know what a CEO is actually supposed to be doing? Like, how did you guys divide up work?
So, for example, I don't know, this shouldn't sound too negative. I don't call myself CEO. I call myself a managing director, to be honest, because I think CEO, would have to have quite a lot of staff and lines to report to you.
Fair. Same thing. I call myself managing director as well, because it is
small. We're still a small company. We are deliberately not in scale, so we are still a small core team until we have to go commercial and then actually go into scale. And with scale comes burn, and comes significant burn, and you have to deliver. And there's only one shot to go commercial as a startup. So in the end, what I did is I did research online on how to do the basics in finance, on how to do the basics on reporting, and just watched YouTube videos on different topics. And then it's just learning by doing. And I think if you always want to bring good quality in whatever it is, if it's in your marketing materials, if it's in your pitch decks, if it's in your product development, you have that standard. It has to be good. Otherwise, you don't present it. You will come up with something good. And we, in the first 2 years, we lived in Impact Hub. We were there. We lived there. We slept there sometimes. We had a lot of fun nights drinking, but we could still, back then I didn't have any hangovers. I could work and drink. So it's a different time now. I think in the end you grind yourself you shape the diamond, and it takes time. It doesn't just pop out, and it's great.
But when you started out, there were clear division of labor. Let's say.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, you're science, you're engineering, you're giving advice, and I'm running the thing.
Yes,
I'm finding the money. I'm setting a strategy.
Yes. Okay. But still to this date, we are 3 people doing all the major decisions. So it's the CTO, CFO. He's the secretary of the board essentially. He's he calls it everything paper based. So all the fun stuff. And then there's our COO. So our first early, really important hire. He came in when we industrialized the product. If we would have industrialized my way, we would have never had attractive margin, because it would have been way too complicated, way over the top. Wouldn't have added any value. And he came from industry. He knew the suppliers. He knew how to manufacture this at scale. And we three, he's the second managing director in the company. He's my line deputy. We make, I mentioned that, all decisions together. If there's a decision that we can't make unanimously in one day, we go home and we discuss it again the next day. If we're still it's not unanimously, that's fine. But we look and see if there's if we can find a path together to make a decision. But in the end, I do the final decision if it's not unanimously. So I have the final saying, but I can't reinvent the wheel. I'm not there making the best decision of all of them. They all have to contribute to come to a strategy or to a decision in the end.
You don't have to answer this, but what's the worst decision you made?
The worst decision we made.
No, you.
Me.
When it comes down to you, right? You've got to make a call, and you've made a decision, and you can look back and say, I got much better at this through the years, where I can look back and say, hey guys, that's completely on me. I fucked up. That was my fault, and let's fix it together. But I'm recognizing it, because I always had this thing where, no, I know best. The others, but they're not running this thing. It's me. But then you can look back and say, you know what, you were actually right. And I think the more you can do that,
definitely all
the better
the time.
you make the decisions in the future.
Same in marriage.
That took me a long time as well.
Yeah.
That took me a very long time.
Yeah.
But what's one that sticks out? Because there's always one that's kind of salient that you're like, ugh, it might have been a hire, it might have been...
Exactly. So it's hire, for sure. One thing, it took me time, because in the beginning we started this company intermixing friendship, because two of the founders I knew already. I didn't start. I knew them. We started off as friends, and then bringing in the last puzzle part, essentially. So I was always friendly to employees, or building a relationship and so on. But at a certain stage, you need to be strict, and you need to really then also say, if there is not a match and not the performance you hire someone for, you just need to be upfront, and you need to say, it is not worth our time. Putting the energy in is not the output you're getting that you wanted. Right? Yeah. So that took time for me to learn. To be honest, it took me multiple years to learn. So probably we had dragged some hires longer than we should have. So we should have had faster decision making on this. Then another thing, there are always mistakes that happen. For example, financing rounds, you make a comma at the wrong part just at the end of a negotiation, and it costs you a little bit more money. Stuff like that. There are always things happening. Fuck-ups always happen.
Yeah.
All the time. Yep. We did this funny side note. We did our first term sheet. I had no clue. I never signed a term sheet with anyone. I'm not a legal expert. I came, as I said, a newbie to it, and we thought it's completely binding, and told the lawyers, guys, it's all said and done. And they told us, guys, it's a non-binding term sheet. It's written in the second part of the header.
So you were, and no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for being so honest. I think it's one thing I've heard from founders over the years is that sometimes it's great. Things work really well for a little while, but when you need to move to that next level in a company, all of a sudden you need different skills.
Definitely.
And it might not be those people. And even though you're very close, and most people stumble with that. It's one thing that I hear over and over again. It's like hanging on too long and some of those people might be shareholders, and they say, okay, it's smart enough, like you said, if I don't perform my role, we need a new CEO. Like, for example, if you guys go commercial, that could be like, okay, maybe it's
We looked at it. I brought it to the board myself,
to say, hey, maybe we need to look at somebody else.
There are multiple facets in this. One thing is your willingness to learn. So I don't say I'm not, but I'm just saying in that position, if you go commercial, you need to be on fire. You need to learn. And if in our market, US, you need to travel. You need to be there. It's not, you're not going to change the world from Zurich in the US. When we did the study, we had over 200 flights in 1 year as a team. In the States, we went all the time. We went on roadshow. We fly in on a Sunday, and we have 7 cities until Friday, and we fly out again. And you do that multiple times in a month. You go like in the beginning of the month, you come in the end of the month, and
it's my nightmare.
It's very interesting. You know, you see the whole states, you interact with so many people, and you see what you're actually building and what's behind it. You know, because it's very. For everybody, it's sexy. It's very comfort zone. I do it from here. I do it over Teams, and everything is manageable. But if you work with different other cultures, what I learned is, for example, with the US, it's always very positive. But 1 month later, you talk about it again, and it's not working, but it's still very, very positive. And you will never get to the weeds of it if you don't go. So, for example, when it comes to hiring a new CEO in a commercial stage, you can hire someone that is very experienced, that knows who to hire, that has no network, but that might actually also be just hopping by. You know, he comes in 2 years, doesn't perform, doesn't get his bonus, and is out. So it's a very nuanced, strategy play. And we hired our US president 2.5 years back, before even being commercial in the US. So he had now 3 years with us preparing us for launch, building relationships, building the proper strategy to get into the market space. And he has been one of the best additions we ever put into the team. He's American. He did an exit previously, 3-digit exit, managed multiple hundreds of people. And he is, loyal, trustworthy guy that adds a lot of value to the company. But came through the discussions of, do we want to hire someone else? And just open discussions with the board. So as I said, I brought it forward, and it was just a discussion at that stage.
I want to jump back to something you said at the very beginning. You said I take doctors for dinner. This is a constant discussion that I've had both within our team and with other people in business. I'm very much an in-person person. Mm-hmm. We have got a generation of people in recruitment business right now and all other businesses who kind of started their career during COVID, which was no in-person. Everything Zoom, everything Teams. And now they never built that muscle or they didn't, not that they can't do it, they just don't see it as something important. How important do you think that actually is to meet somebody in person, understand that person? Or is it, hey, look at my data, I'll send it to you, and it's undeniable, that sells for me, versus actually knowing somebody? What's your kind of philosophy there as a company? Because it sounds like you guys are very much an in-person type of business.
You know, in the end, it depends on at what stage you are. You know, I mean, I can just go through maybe our stage as a company and think of how much do we travel. Yeah. So, for example, in the beginning, when we did our first study in the development of the product, you engage very heavily with the development company. We work together with a development company, and we were with them hands-on together developing this product. Later on, you get into this preparation of this large study, and you work with people that use your device. Everybody in healthcare is chronically overworked and is chronically underpaid for what they're doing. So for many of them, this is an add-on.
You mean the frontline workers?
Frontline workers, okay, they get this device, the let's say the practice or the research group says we want to trial this, but that nurse or that physician already has a backlog of 100 other things.
And they don't have 15 minutes.
It's work, they have to get familiarized with the protocol. It's FDA reviewed. We have a CRO, a clinical research organization, managing all of this, auditing data, training everybody. Everybody that does one finger on the study has to be trained. It needs to be certified. It needs to be audited, Yep. So you are heavily dependent on the energy of that person wanting to try this, So you need to build a relationship. Otherwise, it's never going to work. So that's what I mean with now the next stage. I think for everybody who thinks they can change the world from the desk at home, where you actually have to sell something long-term, just engage with some sales reps and they will tell you how it works, because they go all the time and they just go. So for us, when we did our commercial planning, we also looked at filling early positions for VP of sales and so on. It's a very healthy cross-check of how close you actually should be to the market to understand what you're actually doing. Because you can build a castle in your dreams. could be completely the wrong thing you built over years without actually double checking her. And this is what they see. I mean, what life science investors see over and over again, that if the team stays too closed indoors, that sometimes they develop a product for no need, for example.
Yep. So what do you think the difference is that you get from a dinner with somebody versus a 1 hour Teams call?
I mean, they remember you. Yeah. They remember you, and you can call them up and you see them on the conference, and they see you, you see them, you share another dinner with them, you hear about the personal stories. I mean, for us, it's a little bit easier because, I mean, we are the Swiss company that is doing like this proper study. So for physicians, I mean, many of those that we work with are really key opinion leaders, so they are coryphees in their space, so they can choose who to work with. They see this, it's a new device, I can use it with nurses, it's very safe, it's a lead indication, very interesting. And they do the double-blind RCT with sham control, so they do the scientific right thing to prove it, because in the US there are different pathways of how you can get cleared. So there are some paths where you don't even have to show clinical data.
Yeah. Like 510K.
510K, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is the de novo pathway that we're pursuing. So it's a higher scientific rigor you need to prove. So they appreciate that. And you come a little bit into open doors.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about that briefly is kind of what are the employees of the future, and this kind of IRL person, the person with those soft skills who can go out and really pull in knowledge to the company. Because if you are in that kind of, you're just in, like you say, in castle, building something that maybe nobody actually needs.
Yeah, and if you have to imagine, if you want something from that person, there are 2 handsful of other people that want the same thing.
Yeah.
If there's no competition, there's no market. It's just as simple as it gets, I mean, if you want something from a person because he's very skilled and good at what he's doing, there are other people that, for example, in our case, patients, you pay per patient fees. You compete with other companies that are in development cycles that want the same patients, essentially. Right?
What about like coping, right? When you talked about this fly in Sunday, 7 cities in a week by Friday, how do you cope? I mean, if you're working that much, there's got to be a valve somewhere that can release a little bit. Like anything that you like to do to kind of get your mind off it, besides the walking by the seal? Yeah,
sports. You should do sports to decompress. I mean, I go, for example, skinning. I go running. I play badminton. But when I have the time, I do it. Mostly to really decompress. If you can share this with other people, it's easier to just get through it. So, for example, if you have that trip, I don't go on that trip alone. For example, we do that trip always 2 people, because we know alone it's a grind. You're there, it's jet lag, and you go. In the US, you have connection flights. You miss the connections all the time. So suddenly you're there, you sleep at the airport, there's a storm coming or something else, there's a blizzard, and it can be all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we always go 2 people, so you have kind of a trip together and you have that experience, and you might come home with a big hangover. But we call that freedom to operate. Everybody that does that at that level at the company, they can choose how much to work at what time. They don't have to come the next 2 days, because we know they will probably, they have so much work from that trip still in their inbox. They will still work, but they might do it at home. So for these...
Or wake up at noon. I mean...
Whatever.
Work till
anything.
Work till the nighttime. Yeah.
So those individuals are free to do the work they want, how they want. So I think for me in that, if I come back from a trip like that, we did this for 1.5 years. I'm happy it ended because now I got twins. I mentioned that. It's a different challenge.
I was going to ask you about that as well.
I would not work right now.
Couldn't do that,
no,
right?
I couldn't do that right now. No.
Okay, but you have other people in the team who are kind of filling in.
I still, this year, I go, even though I got the twins just now, I will go to the US 5 times for 5 days. So it's still, but I go to a conference, I book a suite, and I have interactions with partners, and I don't go city to city to city to city to city. For that, I have other people now.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have the relationship now.
Getting everybody in one place.
We build it,
And it's already planned ahead of time.
Exactly.
We're at the conference, but we're not running stand to stand.
Yeah.
We've got prearranged meetings.
Exactly.
Because we know all those people are in that city at that time.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's a very different thing, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chris, is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't talk about? Anything you'd like to kind of put out there to the world?
I mean, in the end, it's all very technical, you know? Everybody in the startup world or in the ecosystem works on different niches. I mean, Medtech is a niche, biotech is a niche. It's hard to transfer each individual niche to the others. I think in the end, you just need to be grateful and try to be grateful about the work you do, you know? I mean, it's sometimes hard you're standing in the forest and you don't see the tree, because you are so deep in your problem solving or in the deadlines or in cash is running out that sometimes try to step back, be grateful. I always try to talk to patients if I can. Often I can't because I'm industry, but in the end we do something, try to solve a problem for someone. We most of the time always think about the nurse, we think about the doctor, we think about the insurance, we think who pays for it. But in the end, we don't really talk or think about the patient that's actually getting this, you know, that is actually having that problem. So it's,
It's important to stay connected to that.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a segment that we do right at the very end of each podcast, which is called a mentorship minute. Now, you can make it 30 seconds, you can make it 2 minutes, but it's sort of think of that person who is maybe at the graduation stage, somebody who's maybe at a crossroads, I don't know, corporate, I don't know, go into entrepreneurship. What is one piece of advice that really you think you would have loved to have when you were starting out?
To start something new, it needs your open-mindedness of seeing the opportunity that might be in front of you. But maybe you are occupied or you are scared of actually taking a step further. So for everybody who comes out of university, doesn't know what to start, try to be open-minded. There are many events you can go to interact with folks from the startup ecosystem, from previous founders. There are podcasts like yours. There are newsletters. There are innovation challenges you can attend. So if you want to have a fun evening off with people which are essentially like you, because they are all curious like you. You know, they're nice people. You know, they are there. They want to do something. They don't want to sit on the couch. They want to do something. So I think the moment you start to realizing you're not alone, everybody feels the same. It's very rare that there's someone and they tell you, I woke up when I was 13. I woke up one day and I knew I'd do exactly that.
Yeah.
Maybe not the full coin.
Lying.
Maybe. So I think in the end, the moment you realize there is no magic formula, it's a stupid saying. The end is not the goal. The path towards the end is what's actually bringing you there. So you just need to continue walking. And then, for example, if I don't know what would have happened at the end of that 9 months, we had that discussions. Do we stop? And we had the discussions and we decided to continue after 4 months. And we continued, but we could at that same time point, if we wouldn't have had that discussion in that quality, we could have also maybe stopped.
Yeah.
And you would have never known what would have happened. Now we have treated roughly 2,000 patients. So we already had a small impact even being pre-launch. So I think in the end, if you're open-minded and you try and you're being honest to yourself and you just see the others not as a threat, but maybe just as your companion or as giving you more quality and more insights, then maybe things don't look that scary anymore. And then once it's not that scary, you might be off to a fun adventure in the end.
I think you're going to have a pretty fun adventure. I mean, best of luck with the readout at the end of the year. We'll be watching, and I think you've got exciting times coming ahead. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Maurice. Have a good day.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you made it this far, I think you might have enjoyed this. And if so, please, if you haven't done so already, like, follow, subscribe, and rate us where possible. I'd really appreciate that. And another thing I'd also appreciate is if you could share this with somebody you think needs to hear it. The goal here is to inspire, and we need to spread the word. So anything you can do to help is much appreciated. I'll see you in the next lab.